Hey everyone, tonight we're going to drift off to the gentle glow of ancient Greece, but perhaps not to the thunderous halls of Zeus or the dramatic shores of Poseidon's realm. No, tonight we're seeking a quieter corner of Olympus, a warmth that's often overlooked. Imagine for a moment the deepest comfort you know. Maybe it's the gentle hiss of a radiator on a cold night, the soft glow of a lamp in a silent room, or the rhythmic crackle of a campfire under a sky full of stars. That feeling of unwavering presence, of steady, quiet peace. That's where we're headed. We're exploring the story of Hestia, the goddess of the hearth, the home, and the very essence of sanctuary. She's the Olympian who chose calm over chaos, stability over drama. And let's be honest, in a family like the Olympians, choosing calm was a full-time job. You think your family gatherings are awkward? Try navigating a celestial dinner party where your uncle might turn someone into a spider if the ambrosia is a bit off. You probably wouldn't survive a week trying to keep your ancient Greek oikos from burning down or, just keeping the fire going 24/7 with whatever damp wood you could find. No gas starters or electric blankets back then. So, before you get too comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It truly helps the channel find other sleepy souls seeking a bit of historical calm. And as always, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always fascinating to see our little community of night owls and history buffs stretching across the globe. Now, turn down the lights, turn on your fan for some gentle noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing not on a windswept mountain peak, nor in a bustling ancient city square, but in a space that feels centered. It's the heart of a home, an oikos in ancient Greece. The air is warm, carrying the faint, comforting scent of wood smoke, perhaps pine or slower-burning olive wood, mixed with the aroma of baking bread, a staple, and the subtle fragrance of dried herbs like oregano and thyme, hanging in dusty bunches from the rafters. Before you, in the very center of the main room, is the hearth. It's not a grand, roaring inferno designed for ostentatious display, but a steady, unwavering flame, its tendrils dancing with a quiet grace. This is Hestia's domain. This is where her story begins, and in many ways where it always remains, a constant, gentle pulse. To truly understand Hestia, you have to journey back, way back, to the rather unsettling nursery days of the Olympian gods. You remember Cronus, the Titan king, driven by that rather unfortunate prophecy that one of his children would overthrow him. His solution? A preemptive and frankly quite horrifying snack. He swallowed them whole. It's a bit of an extreme parenting technique, admittedly, one that probably wouldn't fly at modern PTA meetings. My kid talks back, so, cosmic digestion. Not ideal? Well, Hestia was the firstborn. Imagine that. The very first. You are her for a moment. That initial bewildering entry into existence, only to be met not with a warm blanket, but with the gaping maw of your own father. You are enveloped in a strange, fleshy darkness. It's not painful, not like being chewed, but it's confining. A warm, damp, surprisingly spacious prison. You might have felt the rumbles of Cronus's titanic digestion of other non-divine meals, a disconcerting soundtrack to your early existence. Then, one by one, your siblings join you in this bizarre internal waiting room. Demeter, with her earthy scent, perhaps already faintly present. Hera, probably complaining about the accommodations even then. Hades likely finding the gloom rather agreeable. Poseidon perhaps already trying to stir up some internal tides. It must have been a strange, muffled sibling rivalry in there. Who gets the least cramped spot? Who has to listen to Poseidon practice his future sea monster roars? And when Zeus, the final child, cleverly substituted with a swaddled stone by your resourceful mother Rhea, finally grew up and launched his celestial rescue mission, often depicted as giving Cronus an emetic, a potion to make him vomit, Hestia was the last to emerge. First in, last out. There's a profound symmetry to that, isn't there? Like a perfectly contained cycle. It's almost as if her journey through the literal heart of her father foreshadowed her eventual role as the goddess of the heart of the home. Some ancient writers and philosophers saw great significance in this order, suggesting it granted her a special kind of primacy, being both the eldest and, in a way, the newest to the world outside. A quiet paradox for a goddess who embodies both the ancient, foundational stone and the ever-new flame. Then came the Titanomachy, that decade-long universe-shaking conflict. Imagine the sheer, deafening chaos. Mountains are being uprooted and thrown like pebbles. Lightning cracks the sky with deafening roars. The very fabric of reality seems to groan under the strain. While your brothers and sisters, Zeus, a veritable storm of righteous fury with his newly forged thunderbolts, Poseidon, already testing the earth-shaking capabilities of his trident, Hera, a figure of regal command and probably some excellent strategic glaring, were deeply embroiled in the cosmic brawl. You can picture Hestia finding a different role. Perhaps she was the quiet, unseen force ensuring the sacred Olympian campfire, the symbolic heart of their rebellion, never faltered. You can almost see her, amidst the clamor of divine war cries and crashing landscapes, calmly tending a small, defiant flame, a tiny pocket of order in a universe tearing itself apart. It's not a story often sung by the bards, who prefer tales of clashing titans and heroic charges, but it has the ring of Hestia's truth, that small, consistent act of preservation. It's said that soldiers, for centuries, would sometimes carry a small, glowing ember from their own home hearth on long campaigns, a tangible piece of Hestia, a fragment of home to cling to, a tiny, insignificant detail, maybe like that one sock you always pack for comfort, but profoundly meaningful. Once the dust settled and the Olympians stood victorious, they carved up the cosmos like a celebratory cheesecake. Zeus took the sky, Poseidon the seas, Hades the underworld. But Hestia didn't clamor for a vast, sprawling domain or a title dripping with dramatic power. She chose the hearth. And in ancient Greece, the hearth was not just a fireplace. It was the absolute nucleus of life. It was the sacred, beating heart of every oikos, every household. Here the bread was baked, the sustenance of life. Here the family gathered in the evenings, weaving not just wool but also stories, sharing news, laughter, and quiet companionship. Children played by its warm glow, absorbing the tales of gods and heroes. It was where solemn oaths were sworn, their sanctity guaranteed by the presence of the goddess herself. To swear by the hearth was to invoke Hestia, and to break such an oath was a truly terrible offense. The flame itself was a living entity, a direct connection to the divine. It had to be kept burning day and night. Letting the hearth fire go out was a sign of terrible neglect or misfortune, a severing of that vital link. If it did happen, the ritual to relight it was complex, often involving friction or a lens to draw fire from the sun. It couldn't just be any old flame. And when a daughter of the house married, she wouldn't just pack her sandals and a few good chitons. She would carry a burning torch, lit from her mother's hearth, to her new home. There she would use it to kindle her own hearth fire, a beautiful, unbroken thread of light and life, weaving families and generations together through Hestia's steady glow. Imagine the careful journey, shielding that precious flame from wind and rain. A whole wedding procession might be delayed if a sudden gust threatened the bride's ember. Hold everything, folks. Hestia's having a moment. This sacred fire wasn't confined to private homes. Each Greek city-state or polis had its own public hearth, the Prytaneum. This building housed the city's sacred flame, tended continuously by officials, a symbol of the community's vitality, its soul. If a city decided to establish a new colony, guess where the fire for that new settlement's hearth came from? That's right, a flame was solemnly carried from the Prytaneum of the mother city. It was Hestia again, binding communities together, ensuring that even far-flung settlements shared a common sacred origin. It was the ancient equivalent of a shared cultural DNA, passed on through a living flame. Now let's talk about Hestia herself, the goddess. When you picture her, don't imagine the dazzling, often intimidating beauty of Aphrodite, or the warrior fierceness of Athena. Hestia is serene, often depicted veiled, her gaze gentle, her posture one of quiet dignity. She might hold a staff, symbolizing her authority, or sometimes just a small cupped flame, as if offering its warmth. She is the embodiment of steadfastness, and this quiet, unassuming power, this aura of complete self-possession, apparently didn't go unnoticed on Olympus. Both Apollo, the god of light, music, and oh-so-perfect prophecies, and Poseidon, the moody, trident-wielding master of the earthquake and the tidal wave, sought her hand. You can just imagine the scene. Apollo, ever the artist, probably composed a sonnet so beautiful it made the muses themselves weep with envy, promising her an eternity of perfectly harmonized days. Poseidon, more direct, might have offered her dominion over all the treasures of the deep, or perhaps tried to impress her by casually summoning a kraken to do tricks. It must have been quite the celestial courtship drama, enough to keep the gossip columns of Olympus buzzing for weeks. But Hestia, bless her calm heart, wasn't interested in becoming a pawn in Olympian power struggles or the subject of dramatic love ballads. She desired something else: peace, autonomy, and the quiet fulfillment of her sacred duty. So she approached Zeus, the king of the gods, who by now was probably used to mediating all sorts of divine squabbles. In a gesture of profound solemnity, she touched his head, a very serious way to make an oath, and swore that she would remain a virgin forever, dedicating herself entirely to her role as keeper of the hearth. Zeus, perhaps recognizing in her a rare island of stability in his often turbulent family, or maybe just relieved to avoid a feud between his brother and son, respected her unwavering conviction. He not only granted her wish, but also decreed a special honor for her. Hestia was to receive the first part of every sacrifice, both public and private, and to be venerated in the home of every mortal and in the communal hall of every god. This quiet refusal, this active choice for a different kind of existence, set her apart. She found her power not in commanding legions or oceans, but in being that constant, unwavering center. It's like she intuitively understood that true strength isn't always about the loudest voice or the biggest display. Sometimes it's in the quiet refusal to be anything other than what you are. This brings us to a point that historians and classicists still gently debate: the nature and visibility of Hestia's public worship. You see, while every single private home in Greece was in essence a sanctuary to Hestia, and every Prytaneum burned her sacred flame, grand, imposing temples dedicated exclusively to her were noticeably rarer than those for Zeus, Hera, Apollo, or Athena. You won't find as many colossal statues of Hestia dominating city skylines. Some scholars in the past interpreted this as her being a lesser goddess. But that's like saying air is less important than marble because you can't build a statue out of it. More contemporary thought suggests that this apparent lack of monumental temples doesn't signify lesser importance at all. Instead, it might indicate that her worship was so deeply woven into the very fabric of daily existence, so personal, so ubiquitous, that erecting separate, grand structures was almost beside the point. Why build a special house for Hestia when she already lived in everyone's house? Her temple was the home. Her altar was the hearth. She was not a deity you visited on special occasions. She was the occasion of your daily life. The debate isn't really if she was worshipped, that's undeniable, but how that worship was primarily expressed. Was it in grand public spectacle or in the million quiet rituals of domestic life? The evidence leans heavily towards the latter, a testament to her unique, pervasive, and profoundly intimate connection with humanity. Imagine the constant, subtle reminders of her presence. The first sip of wine at a meal poured out to her, a silent thank you. The last embers banked at night, a prayer for safety until morning. The smell of baking bread wasn't just food, it was Hestia's blessing. The warmth on your face as you gathered around the fire on a chilly evening wasn't just combustion, it was her embrace. She represented the security, the continuity, the very possibility of civilization. Because without the home, without that stable center, what is there? It was Hestia who provided the invisible framework for everything else. She didn't need thunderous pronouncements or earth-shattering miracles. Her miracle was the quiet, everyday miracle of home. And in a world as chaotic and unpredictable as ancient Greece, filled with temperamental gods, roaming monsters, and the ever-present threat of war or famine, That steady, reliable warmth at the very center of your life was probably the greatest divine gift of all. She was the patron saint of it's okay, you're safe here. And sometimes that's the most powerful magic there is. So you are Hestia, the embodiment of the hearth, the quiet center of every home. But what about your own home, so to speak? What about life up on Mount Olympus, that glittering, cloud-veiled penthouse of the ancient world, populated by a family that puts the fun in dysfunctional and the drama in, well, everything? You can imagine the scene. Zeus is probably thundering about some new decree or a stolen thunderbolt. Hera is meticulously planning her next revenge plot with the regal fury only a queen of the gods can muster. Aphrodite is causing hearts to flutter and diplomatic incidents to erupt with a single eyelash bat. And Ares is likely just sharpening his sword, humming a little war ditty. It's a celestial reality show 24/7. And there you are, Hestia. In the midst of this divine whirlwind, you are the calm. You are the keeper of the sacred hearth of Olympus itself. Yes, even the gods in their magnificent, often chaotic, immortal lives needed a central fire. This wasn't just any fire, it was the symbolic core of their collective existence, the flame from which, metaphorically, all their divine power and unity radiated. It had to be pure, eternal, and tended with utmost reverence. And that naturally was your charge. You can picture yourself there, not in the council chambers vying for influence, nor on the celestial battlefields, but quietly ensuring that the divine flame burned bright and steady. Perhaps the ambrosia tasted a little sweeter by its glow, the nectar flowed a little smoother. It's a subtle power, isn't it? The power of ensuring everyone else has a warm place to return to, even if they're too busy squabbling to notice who kept it lit. You're like the one person in the group project who actually does the quiet, essential work, while everyone else is arguing about the font for the title slide. One of the most telling things about you, Hestia, is your remarkable consistency in not getting involved. Think about the Trojan War. Almost every other Olympian, major or minor, picked a side. They were down there on the plains of Troy disguised as mortals, whispering advice, deflecting spears, throwing divine hissy fits when their favorites were injured. Zeus was trying to referee from on high. Hera was passionately pro-Greek, Apollo pro-Trojan. It was a mess. And Hestia? You, Hestia, stayed put. You didn't leave Olympus. You didn't march with armies or plot with heroes. Your domain was the hearth, the place of sanctuary, and war was the antithesis of that. This steadfast refusal to be drawn into conflict is a powerful statement. It wasn't about indifference, perhaps, but about an unwavering commitment to your own principles, your own sacred duty. Why abandon the eternal flame for a temporary, albeit epic, brawl? It's a quirky detail that many might overlook, but it speaks volumes about your priorities. You were, in essence, the designated non-combatant of the divine realm. This brings us to a rather fascinating discussion that still circulates among those who study these ancient tales. The matter of your seat among the 12 Olympians and the arrival of Dionysus. Now, the 12 Olympians is often presented as this fixed, august board of divine directors. But the list sometimes varied slightly in ancient sources. The mainstream story, the one often told, is that when Dionysus, the vibrant, chaotic, and undeniably popular god of wine, revelry, and ecstatic release, ascended to Olympus, there was a potential numbers problem. 12 is a neat, symbolic number after all. Rather than cause strife or an awkward celestial squabble for a seat at the top table, can you imagine the politicking? Apollo trying to outshine everyone, Ares demanding it by force? You, Hestia, are said to have willingly relinquished your place. Historians and mythographers still debate the nuances of this. Did you truly give up your seat, implying a demotion? Or was it a graceful act of making space, one that didn't diminish your own inherent honor? Some argue it was the ultimate expression of your character, prioritizing peace and harmony over status and prestige. You saw perhaps that Dionysus, with his surging, life-affirming energy, had something vital to offer, and you, secure in your universal worship in every home and city heart, didn't need the official title of one of the 12 to validate your importance. It's like the difference between being on the committee and being the indispensable foundation the committee meets upon. Others suggest that the concept of the 12 was more fluid, or that Hestia's position was so unique that her presence wasn't dependent on that specific count. She was, in a way, both an Olympian and something more fundamental, something that transcended their squabbles for rank. Imagine the scene. Dionysus arrives, a whirlwind of vine leaves, ecstatic music, and the faint, intoxicating aroma of fermentation. There's a buzz, a new energy, and you, Hestia, with a gentle, knowing smile, simply make room. No fuss, no resentment. It's an act of profound humility if you think about it, from one of the original eldest Olympians. It's the divine equivalent of quietly offering your better seat to a guest, ensuring harmony prevails. This act, if it occurred as popularly told, would cement your reputation as the calmest, most selfless of the gods. You valued concord over position, a rare trait then as now. It's a bit like that quietly competent person at work who doesn't need the fancy job title because everyone already knows they're the one holding things together. Oh, you want this department to function? Yeah, talk to Hestia, even if her name's not on the org chart anymore. Beyond the grand stage of Olympus, your influence, Hestia, permeated the very structure of civic life. We touched on the Prytaneum, that public hearth in each city-state. This wasn't just a ceremonial fireplace, it was the city's symbolic core, its soul. Here, ambassadors were received with the rites of hospitality, honored by the city's sacred flame. Laws might have been stored nearby, under your watchful, steady glow, implying that justice and order were rooted in the stability you represented. It was where public records were kept, where magistrates might take their oaths of office, swearing by your name to uphold their duties with integrity. To betray such an oath sworn at the city's heart was an unthinkable sacrilege. And there's your connection to catharsian, or ritual purification. Fire itself is a powerful purifying agent, and your sacred flame, Hestia, was considered the purest of all. It was used in rituals to cleanse individuals or even entire communities from spiritual pollution, from the miasma that could arise from bloodshed or sacrilege. Before important civic or religious ceremonies, participants would purify themselves, and the presence of your flame signified a sacred, cleansed space where humans could properly engage with the divine. It's a fascinating concept. Your quiet fire not only warmed bodies and cooked food, but also cleansed souls and sanctified spaces. It's a bit like a divine air purifier, but for bad vibes and spiritual oopsies. While you might not have had the huge, raucous festivals of Dionysus or the grand athletic contests of Zeus or Apollo, your presence was felt in countless smaller, more intimate rituals. At the start of any significant undertaking, be it a council meeting or the departure of a general to war, an offering would be made to you first. It was a way of grounding the endeavor, of ensuring it began from a place of stability and sanctity. The Vestal virgins in Rome, whose cult of Vesta was the Roman continuation and arguably an elevation of your worship, Hestia held immense power and responsibility, primarily the sacred duty of keeping the state's eternal flame alight. If that flame went out, it was considered a dire omen for the entire Roman state. This shows how critical your essence, the perpetual sacred fire, was to the very identity and security of a community. The quirky detail here is that these Vestals, while revered, were also subject to incredibly strict rules. If a Vestal let the flame go out, the punishment was severe, often scourging. And if she broke her vow of chastity, the penalty was to be buried alive. It's a stark reminder that while your domain, Hestia, was one of peace and stability, the responsibility of maintaining that sacred purity was taken with deadly seriousness. Not exactly a low-pressure job. Your very presence, Hestia, defined sacred space. You demarcated the boundary between the inside and the outside, the safe and the potentially dangerous, the ordered and the chaotic. The oikos, the home, was your sanctuary. Within its walls, under the glow of your hearth, there was a semblance of order, a refuge from the unpredictable world. This contrasted sharply with the agora, the public marketplace, which was often a bustling, noisy, and competitive, male-dominated sphere. Your realm was one of peace, nurture, and continuity. You were the unseen guardian of the threshold, the silent guarantor of the home's sanctity. And this ties directly into your crucial role in Xenia, the sacred code of hospitality, which was a cornerstone of ancient Greek morality. When a traveler, a stranger, arrived at a home, they would often make straight for the hearth. By doing so, they placed themselves under your protection, Hestia, and under the protection of Zeus Xenios, the aspect of Zeus who oversaw hospitality. To accept a guest at your hearth was to offer them safety, food, and warmth. To harm or refuse a supplicant at the hearth was a terrible violation, inviting divine retribution. You, Hestia, were the silent witness to these compacts of trust and generosity between host and guest. The sharing of bread baked on your hearth sealed this bond. It's a profound concept that the simple act of sharing fire and food could create such a powerful moral obligation. It made the world a slightly less dangerous place, one connection at a time, all radiating from your steady, unassuming flame. Imagine if every internet comment section had a tiny virtual Hestia in the corner. Perhaps things would be a tad more civil. A swear by the digital hearth before you post kind of rule. So you see, Hestia, your calmness wasn't emptiness. It was a deep, resonant fullness. It was the quiet hum of the universe ticking along smoothly. While other gods were busy with their grand narratives of conquest, love affairs, and vengeance, you were engaged in the equally vital, if less flamboyant, work of maintaining the sacred fabric of existence. You were the infrastructure of the divine and mortal worlds. Not the flashy superhero, perhaps, but the quiet, indispensable engineer who ensures the city's lights stay on, the water flows, and the foundations remain solid, allowing everyone else to have their adventures. And as you sit there on Olympus, or in the heart of a humble farmhouse, or in the grand prytaneum of a bustling city, your flame flickers, a steady, unwavering beacon. It's a reminder that even in the midst of chaos, there is a center, a place of peace, a promise of continuity. And that in itself is a profound and enduring power. You are Hestia, the quiet flame, the steady heart. We've journeyed through your unique beginnings, your unwavering stance amidst Olympian drama, and your profound, if often understated, influence on both the private lives of mortals and the civic soul of ancient Greece. As we draw our exploration to a gentle close, let's linger a little longer by your warmth, considering the symbols that speak of you and the quiet philosophy you embody. Your most potent symbol, of course, is the flame itself. Not a raging conflagration designed for dramatic effect, but an eternal, self-renewing fire. This wasn't just representative of you. In a very real sense, it was you. Where the sacred hearth burned, there you were. To be in the presence of that flame was to be in your presence. Imagine the feeling, a warmth that was more than physical, a light that seemed to illuminate not just the room, but perhaps the soul itself. It was a purity that demanded respect, a truth that tolerated no falsehood, a life force that connected the ephemeral human existence to the eternal divine. The flame was a constant reminder of the unchanging amidst the ever-shifting tides of mortal life. It was the quiet heartbeat of the cosmos, made visible and tangible in every home. And think about the shape of the hearth, so often circular, and how this preference was echoed in some of the rare public temples dedicated to you, like the Temple of Vesta in Rome, your Roman incarnation. A circle, Hestia, is such a perfect emblem for you. It has no beginning and no end, a visual metaphor for eternity, for the unbroken continuity of family and community that you safeguard. Within a circle, all points on the circumference are equidistant from the center, a beautiful representation of equality and shared belonging. There are no corners to hide in, no hierarchical seating arrangements dictated by angles. Everyone gathered around your circular hearth shared equally in its warmth and its sacredness. It's a geometry of peace, of inclusion, of a community perfectly centered. The hearth, in this sense, became a domestic omphalos, the navel of the home, just as Delphi was considered the navel of the world. It was the absolute focal point from which the life of the household radiated and to which it always returned. You're often depicted veiled, Hestia. This veil is far more than a mere sartorial convention or a nod to ancient ideals of feminine modesty. It's a rich symbol. It speaks of your profound sanctity, your separation from the profane, the everyday clamor and vulgarity. It hints at an inner world, a depth of being that doesn't require outward display for validation. Your power isn't projected, it's indwelling. Like the hearth fire, whose true power to sustain, to purify, to unite, is contained within its gentle, unassuming glow. Your veiled presence suggests a profound, almost ungraspable importance. It is the quiet dignity of that which is inherently valuable, needing no external affirmation. It invites contemplation rather than demanding attention. And then there are those wonderfully humble symbols like the kettle or the simple cooking pot that connect you so deeply to the rhythms of daily life. It might seem almost comically mundane to associate a goddess with a kettle, especially when her brothers wield thunderbolts and command oceans. But this is precisely where your unique divinity shines, Hestia. You sanctify the everyday. The nourishment prepared over your flame, the water heated for a soothing drink or a cleansing bath, these small domestic rituals become acts of devotion through their connection to you. Perhaps you are also the patroness of things working as they should in the home. The roof that doesn't leak over the hearth, the pot that doesn't crack, the fire that draws cleanly. A gentle, overseeing spirit ensuring the smooth running of the domestic sphere, which is, after all, the foundation of everything else. The quiet satisfaction of a well-ordered home, a pantry stocked, a warm drink shared. These are your blessings, subtle but deeply felt. This grounding in the practical and the everyday points to the profound philosophy you embody, Hestia. Your domain, the oikos, the home, the household, the family estate, wasn't merely a collection of rooms and possessions. It was an ethical and social universe in miniature. Your presence at the hearth fostered and upheld crucial virtues. Fidelity, for instance. The hearth, a silent witness to all that transpired within the home, encouraged truthfulness and faithfulness among family members. Responsibility was another. The duty to keep your flame alive was a daily lesson in care, diligence, and the understanding that individual actions, or inactions, had communal consequences. And of course, generational continuity. The sacred act of passing the flame from mother's hearth to daughter's new home was a powerful reinforcement of lineage, tradition, and the enduring bonds of kinship. By maintaining that calm, stable center, you were not just keeping a fire lit, you were nurturing the very roots of moral order and social cohesion. The ancient understanding was clear: a society composed of strong, stable homes, each centered on your sacred hearth, would itself be strong and stable. Your supposed passivity, Hestia, when viewed more deeply, reveals itself as your most potent form of action. In the divine soap opera of Olympus, filled with gods and goddesses who were constantly intervening, meddling, plotting, and reacting, your choice to remain centered, to act primarily through being rather than relentless doing, is a statement of incredible power. You didn't need to issue commands, win battles, or orchestrate grand events to assert your importance. Your power was inherent, like the quiet, irresistible force of gravity that holds everything in place. You simply were, and in that steadfast, unwavering existence, you provided the essential, stable foundation upon which all other activities, divine and mortal, could securely rest. It's the kind of power that doesn't make headlines but makes all headlines possible. You are the silence that allows music to be heard, the stillness that allows true perception to arise. In a culture then and now that often equates value with noise, speed, and conspicuous action, your profound quietude is a lesson in a different, more enduring kind of strength. And this potent essence of Hestia, this quiet power, didn't simply extinguish when the last fires on your ancient altars grew cold. It transformed, it flowed into new channels, its echoes resonating through the centuries. In Rome, as we've touched upon, your spirit found a new and powerful home in Vesta. The cult of Vesta was central to Roman religious and civic life. The Vestal virgins, chosen in childhood, dedicated 30 years of their lives to your service, their primary and most sacred duty being the tending of the Ignis Vestae, the eternal flame in the Temple of Vesta. This temple, the Aedes Vestae, wasn't just a pretty building. It, and its sacred storehouse, the Pinus Vestae, believed to hold sacred objects crucial to Rome's destiny like the Palladium, were considered fundamental to the imperium and solace, power and welfare of the Roman state. The public holidays in your honor, the Vestalia in June, were important occasions where even married women could enter the inner sanctum of Vista's temple. The intricate rituals, the immense reverence afforded to Vesta and her priestesses, all underscore the profound societal understanding that a community needs a symbolic, unifying heart, a constant sacred presence, precisely the role you always fulfilled, Hestia. Even now, in our bustling, often secular modern world, though we may not consciously invoke your name, Hestia, your essence endures. The phrase, the heart of the home, still carries a deep emotional resonance, doesn't it? It speaks of a place of ultimate comfort, security, and belonging. When we strive to create that feeling, whether through the physical arrangement of our living spaces, the rituals of family meals, or simply the cultivation of a welcoming atmosphere, we are, in a sense, tending your flame. The concept of an eternal flame burning at national memorials, a solemn, unwavering light symbolizing perpetual remembrance, honor, and the enduring spirit of a people, that is a powerful, if indirect, descendant of your ancient, sacred fire. The Olympic flame, too, while historically linked to ancient Olympia's games for Zeus and Hera, carries that potent symbolism of a sacred fire journeying across the world, intended to create a temporary global hearth of peaceful competition and unity. And what of sacred hospitality today? When we open our homes to friends or even strangers, offering them food, drink, a comfortable chair, a listening ear, are we not echoing that ancient imperative to welcome the other at our hearth? These acts of connection, of creating a space where someone else feels safe and valued, are modern manifestations of your spirit, Hestia. And consider, too, the Hestias among us, the caregivers, the community volunteers, the quiet individuals who work tirelessly and often without fanfare to maintain the stability and well-being of their families, their workplaces, their neighborhoods. They are the unseen essentials, the ones who provide the steady warmth and reliable framework that allow others to flourish. This leads us not to a fierce scholarly debate, but to a gentle contemplative pondering as we wind down our journey tonight. In our modern lives, so often characterized by speed, distraction, and a sense of disconnection, have we perhaps lost something of that ancient reverence for the sacred hearth, for the quiet, nurturing center of our lives? Or are we merely finding new ways to cultivate it? When we practice mindfulness, seeking that still point in the turning world. When we engage in simple, grounding rituals like brewing a cup of tea with intention or tending a small garden. When we consciously create moments of quiet connection with loved ones, free from digital interruption, are we not in fact rekindling Hestia's flame within our own contemporary context? It seems the human need for what you represent, Hestia, that quiet, stable core of warmth, sanity, and belonging, is as vital and profound as it ever was. Perhaps it is the silent compass that always, eventually, guides us back to ourselves. So, as you settle deeper now, feeling the gentle, insistent pull of sleep, allow this image of Hestia to become a personal touchstone. See her not as a forgotten deity from a bygone era, but as a timeless invitation. An invitation to discover and nurture that quiet, unwavering center within your own being. That internal space of peace, of steadfastness, that remains untouched by the inevitable storms and stresses of the outer world. Like Hestia, you don't need to be the loudest voice in the room or the most dramatic actor on the stage to possess profound worth and to radiate a quiet, positive influence. Your calm presence, your steady kindness, your innate ability to create a space of warmth and welcome, both for yourself and for others. These are your own sacred flames. Imagine just for a moment your own inner hearth. It might be a tiny, flickering candle flame or a steady, warm glow. It is uniquely yours. It doesn't need grand gestures or elaborate rituals. Its gentle, constant light is its own testament. It is your place of refuge, always accessible, always waiting to welcome you home. It is the quiet, reassuring hum of your own being, constant, authentic, and true. You are the keeper of this precious personal flame. Tend it with gentleness, with awareness, with love. Now, as the story of Hestia, the calmest Olympian, the gentle goddess of the unwavering flame, begins to soften and dissolve into the warm embers of your awareness, Let the profound peace that she embodies settle over you like the softest, most comforting blanket. Let the warmth of her ancient, eternal hearth seep deep into your bones, relaxing every muscle, calming every lingering thought, preparing you for a night of truly deep and restorative rest. Hey everyone, tonight we're venturing south, far south of the familiar pyramids of Giza, down the winding, life-giving ribbon of the Nile, into a land of burning sands, rich gold deposits, and a legacy of powerful rulers that history, for a long time, seemed to whisper about rather than proclaim. We're journeying to the ancient kingdom of Kush in what is now Sudan, a realm where warrior queens, the formidable Candaces, held sway and dared to challenge the mightiest empire the world had ever known. Imagine stumbling upon an old, sun-bleached inscription, or tracing the outline of a forgotten temple in the desert, slowly realizing it tells the story of leaders often overlooked, of an African power that stood proud and defiant. These weren't just queens by marriage, these were women who commanded armies, negotiated treaties, and left their indelible mark on the sands of time. And let's be honest, you probably wouldn't last 5 minutes negotiating trade deals involving ivory, ebony, and exotic animals under the scorching Nubian sun without air conditioning and a really good translation app, let alone thinking about facing down a Roman legion with nothing but your wits and perhaps a very well-aimed arrow. It was a different world, a tougher world. So, before you get too comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It truly helps the channel reach other history enthusiasts looking for a relaxing way to explore these fascinating, often less told stories. And as always, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. It's always a thrill to see our community spanning across continents and time zones. Now turn down the lights, turn on your fan for some gentle noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing on the banks of the Great Nile, but this isn't the Egypt of towering limestone pyramids you might immediately picture. You are further south in Nubia, the ancient land of Kush. The air is dry, hot, yet a gentle breeze rustles the acacia trees and date palms that cling to the river's edge. The desert stretches out around you, vast and ochre-colored, but here, along the fertile strip nourished by the annual floods, a vibrant civilization has thrived for millennia. This is a kingdom with its own distinct culture, its own gods, its own traditions, deeply intertwined with Egypt to the north, yet fiercely independent in spirit. For centuries, Kush was a formidable trading partner, a source of gold so plentiful it was said to be like dust in their land, as well as exotic goods like ivory, ebony, incense, and skilled archers whose prowess was legendary throughout the ancient world. In fact, the Egyptians often referred to Nubia as Ta Seti, the land of the bow, a testament to the martial skill of its people. Our story centers on a line of remarkable rulers from this kingdom, specifically during its later period, when its capital was the bustling city of Meroe. Meroe, a name that should echo with the clang of ironworks and the murmur of a unique script, was a powerhouse. Unlike earlier Kushite capitals that were more heavily influenced by Egyptian culture, Meroe developed its own distinct style in art, architecture, and writing. The Meroitic script, which, though its alphabet is known, largely remains undeciphered, holding onto its secrets like a whispered password. Imagine the frustration and the allure for historians. An entire library of potential knowledge just beyond our linguistic grasp. It's like having the diary of an ancient queen, but it's written in a code you can only half read. And ruling from this vibrant heart of Kush, or at least holding immense power and influence, were the women known by the title Candace, or Candace in its Meroitic form. This wasn't just a name, but a potent royal title, likely meaning Queen Mother or Queen Regnant. It denoted a hereditary position of immense authority, passed down through the maternal line, a fascinating aspect of Kushite society. Historians still debate the precise mechanics of Kushite royal succession. How much was strictly matrilineal, where power and lineage flowed primarily through the queen's side, versus patrilineal systems. It seems likely that the throne often passed from king to his brother, or from king to his sister's son, giving the royal women, the king's mother or sister, a pivotal role in the legitimacy and continuation of the dynasty. The Candace was often the mother of the heir, or even a ruling queen in her own right, wielding both political and religious power. Think about that for a moment. In a world where so many ancient societies relegated women to the domestic sphere, in Kush, you had a recognized lineage of female power, women who were not merely consorts, but were figures of authority, capable of leading a nation and its armies. The Roman writers, when they encountered these formidable queens, were clearly impressed, if a little bewildered. They used Candace almost as a dynastic name, like Pharaoh or Caesar, assuming it was a personal name passed down, rather than a recurring title of office. Now, to understand the strength of these later Candaces who faced Rome, you have to appreciate the deep history of Kush. This wasn't a kingdom that sprang up overnight. Its roots go back thousands of years. There were periods when Kush was under Egyptian domination, its resources exploited, its culture heavily Egyptianized. But there were also periods of powerful Kushite resurgence. Most famously during the 25th dynasty of Egypt from roughly 744 to 656 BCE, Kushite pharaohs, the Black Pharaohs, conquered and ruled over all of Egypt, ushering in a renaissance of pyramid building, though in a distinct Kushite style, smaller and steeper, and temple construction. They saw themselves not as foreign conquerors, but as restorers of traditional Egyptian religious and cultural values. This period left an indelible mark, a memory of Kushite might and prestige that would resonate for centuries. So, when you picture these later queens, remember they stood on the shoulders of a very long and proud history. The wealth of Kush was legendary, particularly its gold. Nubia was the primary source of gold for ancient Egypt for centuries. Imagine the mines, the caravans, the intricate gold jewelry adorning the Kushite royalty, necklaces, earrings, armlets, often inlaid with precious stones like carnelian and lapis lazuli. It wasn't just for show. This wealth fueled their trade, their armies, and their ability to maintain independence. A quirky detail of Kushite royal adornment, distinct from purely Egyptian styles, often included specific types of ram-headed amulets associated with the god Amun, who was worshipped fervently in Kush, and scarification patterns visible on statues and reliefs, hinting at unique cultural practices. These details, preserved in their art, give us small windows into their identity. As we move closer to the period of Roman confrontation, the capital, Meroe, becomes even more significant. Situated strategically near the Nile's sixth cataract and at a crossroads of trade routes, Meroe was not only a political and religious center, but also a major hub for iron production. The discovery of iron smelting technology gave Kush a significant advantage. Iron tools were stronger than bronze, leading to better agricultural yields. Iron weapons were superior, bolstering their military capabilities. Vast slag heaps, remnants of ancient ironworks, still surround the site of Meroe today, a silent testament to its industrial might. It's like finding the Silicon Valley of the ancient Nile, but for iron. The Candaces who ruled from Meroe during the Roman period, from the 1st century BCE to the first few centuries CE, were a force to be reckoned with. These weren't sheltered princesses. They were leaders who inherited a kingdom that had long experience dealing with powerful neighbors. They would have been educated in statecraft, diplomacy, and perhaps even military strategy. The Roman historian Strabo mentions a one-eyed Candace who led her armies against Roman forces in Egypt. He describes her as a masculine sort of woman and blind in one eye. While the masculine descriptor probably just reflects Roman surprise at a woman warrior, the detail about her being one-eyed is vivid and has captured imaginations for centuries. However, a key scholarly debate revolves around identifying this specific one-eyed Candace. Was Strabo referring to Queen Amanirenas, who is famously known for her war with Rome? Or was it another Candace? Records are fragmented, and matching classical Roman accounts with Kushite archaeological and inscriptional evidence can be like piecing together a complex jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. Some historians argue that the one-eyed detail might have been an embellishment or a misunderstanding, while others take it as a factual description of a queen who, despite a physical impairment, was a formidable military leader. The very fact that these queens were leading armies, planning defenses, and negotiating peace treaties directly with Roman prefects tells you everything about their perceived power and agency within their own kingdom. They weren't just sending their sons or husbands to do the fighting, they were often at the forefront. Imagine the scene. You are a Roman soldier, perhaps newly posted to the southern frontier of Egypt in the province of Aegyptus. You've heard tales of the mysterious kingdom to the south, the land of Cush, rich in gold and exotic treasures. And then you hear that its armies, led by a queen, are on the move. It must have been a startling, perhaps even unsettling prospect, challenging Roman notions of gender roles and empire. These Kushite queens were not figures to be underestimated, and their clashes with Rome would become a testament to their courage and the resilience of their ancient kingdom. Their stories, though sometimes pieced together from fragments, paint a picture of remarkable leadership in a world dominated by kings. You are standing at a precipice in history, a moment where the sands of Nubia are about to be stained by a clash of titans. The mighty Roman Empire, that relentless collector of kingdoms, having swallowed Egypt whole in 30 BCE after the dramatic final act of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, now shares a direct and rather uncomfortable border with your kingdom, Kush. Imagine the shift in the very air you breathe. The northern neighbor, Egypt, once a complex tapestry of rival, ally, and sometimes overlord, is now merely a province, a cog in the vast, clanking machinery of Rome. And Rome, with its insatiable appetite, its legions marching like tireless ants, its eagles casting long shadows, and its emperor Augustus, already styling himself as a divine presence on earth, is not known for respecting existing property lines if something shiny lies beyond them. The first Roman prefect of Egypt, Cornelius Gallus, a man undoubtedly eager to etch his name into the annals of Roman glory and impress his new all-powerful boss, begins to make his presence felt along that southern frontier. He doesn't just wave politely from across the border. Inscriptions he leaves behind, like the one at Philae, boast of his military prowess, of kings received into allegiance, of extending Roman influence to the cataracts of the Nile. These are not the words of a man interested in quiet coexistence. You can almost hear the Kushite envoys returning to Meroe, their faces grim, reporting Roman troops fortifying positions, Roman tax collectors sniffing around the lucrative trade routes, perhaps even whispers of Roman eyes glinting at the gold-rich territories in the Dodecashoinos. That 12-mile land, which had been a fluid, often Kushite-controlled buffer zone for generations. From your vantage point in Meroe, as a ruler, a noble, or even a concerned citizen, this Roman advance feels less like a new neighbor moving in, and more like a predator sizing up its next meal. The fear would be palpable. Will Kush become just another name on the long list of Roman conquests? And it is at this charged, critical moment, as the storm clouds of Roman ambition gather on the horizon, that a figure of extraordinary strength, cunning, and royal will steps into the full, unforgiving glare of history. A Candace, very likely Queen Amenarenas. The name itself, Kandake, as we've discussed, was a title of immense authority, often translated as Queen Mother or Queen Regnant, signifying a woman who held power not merely through marriage but by blood and divine sanction. Amenarenas was not born into a world of sheltered palace gardens and frivolous courtly pursuits. A future Candace would have been immersed from childhood in the intricate tapestry of Kushite governance, religion, and tradition. She would have learned the complex genealogies that underpinned royal legitimacy, the ancient rituals required to appease the gods and ensure the Nile's life-giving flood, the delicate art of managing the kingdom's vast resources, its gold, its iron, its agricultural wealth, and the subtle, often perilous dance of diplomacy with neighboring desert tribes, and now with Rome itself. Given Kush's martial history, with its legendary archers and its warrior gods, it's highly probable her education included an understanding of military strategy and leadership. Imagine her as depicted on the reliefs from her era, though weathered by millennia of sun and sand. She is not portrayed as a demure consort. She is a figure of power, tall, robust, adorned in the heavy gold necklaces, intricate earrings, and symbolic amulets of Kushite royalty. Perhaps a diadem with the rearing cobra, the uraeus, a symbol of sovereignty borrowed from Egypt but made distinctly Kushite. Sometimes these queens are shown smiting enemies, a classic pose of pharaonic power, or leading processions of tribute bearers, or making lavish offerings to the lion-headed warrior god Apidamak, who seems to surge in prominence during these assertive Meroitic periods. This wasn't just iconography, it was a statement of intent. The decision to confront Rome, the most powerful empire on earth, would not have been a spasm of reckless anger. It would have been born of careful calculation of councils held deep within the palace at Meroe, weighing the dire risks of inaction against the perilous odds of resistance. No doubt there were voices urging caution, appeasement, but the spirit of defiance, the legacy of Kushite pharaohs who once ruled Egypt itself, ultimately carried the day, championed by a queen who refused to bow. The flashpoint arrives around 24 BCE. After years of escalating Roman pressure, perhaps a Roman attempt to levy taxes on Kushite trade, passing through newly Roman-controlled river ports, or a direct military move into the gold mining regions, Candace Amanirenas determines that the time for talk is over. This is not to be a mere border skirmish, a localized spat. This is a full-scale Kushite military offensive, a direct challenge to Roman authority. You can almost feel the electric hum of anticipation in Meroe as the war drums sound and the armies are mustered. The legendary Kushite archers, their skill honed from childhood, check their bows of polished acacia wood, their arrows fletched with eagle feathers and tipped with razor-sharp iron or obsidian. Their reputation alone was enough to make enemies tremble. Egyptian texts had for centuries praised and feared the bowmen of Nubia. But they were not the only force. Kushite armies would have included disciplined infantry, shielded and armed with spears and the distinctive Kushite short sword, men who knew how to fight in the searing desert heat, to use the wadis and jebels to their advantage. Perhaps fast-moving cavalry units or even war chariots, though their effectiveness in the Nubian terrain might have been more symbolic than practical by this era. And above all, they fought with the conviction that they were defending their homes, their gods, and their queen under the fierce gaze of Apidamak, the lion god whose temples were often adorned with images of him leading Kushite warriors to victory, a truly indigenous deity of war and protection whose favor was crucial. And then, with a speed and ferocity that must have stunned the Romans, the Kushite forces, led or directly inspired by their Candace, surge northwards. They cross the border into Roman-controlled Lower Nubia and sweep into Upper Egypt. They are not just raiding, they are conquering. The Roman frontier towns of Syene, modern Aswan, a key trading post and military garrison, Elephantine Island with its ancient temples, and Philae, the sacred island sanctuary of the goddess Isis, fall before the Kushite onslaught. Roman garrisons, likely undermanned and unprepared for such a coordinated attack from the south, are overwhelmed, defeated, or forced to flee. Imagine the scenes. The disciplined chaos of battle, the cries of warriors, the scent of smoke and fear, and the Kushite standard, perhaps bearing the image of a ram or a lion, being raised over what were, just days before, Roman strongholds. It's a stunningly audacious move, a direct punch to the imperial Roman nose. And the Kushites don't stop at military victory. They engage in potent acts of symbolic warfare. Statues of the Emperor Augustus, erected in these newly Roman towns to proclaim his divine authority, are toppled, defaced, and dragged through the dust. And in one of the most remarkable and delightfully defiant acts in ancient history, a quirky detail that still makes historians smile, the Kushite soldiers capture a magnificent, larger-than-life bronze head from a statue of Augustus in Syene. This isn't just a random piece of loot, it's the emperor's very likeness. They transport this heavy, iconic trophy hundreds of miles south, all the way back to their capital, Meroe. And what do they do with it? In a stroke of genius, a masterclass in psychological warfare, they bury it beneath the threshold of a prominent temple, very possibly one dedicated to Apidamak or another victory deity. Think about the profound symbolism. Every single day as Candace Amanirenas, her priests, her nobles, and her people entered this sacred space to offer thanks for their victories or to pray for the continued prosperity of Kush, they would physically, demonstrably tread upon the image of the Roman emperor. It's an act of such exquisite, calculated contempt. It's saying, "Your divine emperor? He is beneath our feet." This specific head, by the way, was rediscovered by archaeologists in 1910, remarkably preserved in the dry Nubian sand, a tangible link to this extraordinary queen and her defiance. It now resides in the British Museum, a silent testament to a time when Kush humbled Rome. Naturally, Rome, the empire upon which the sun supposedly never set, or at least that was the PR, could not and would not let such a humiliating affront go unpunished. The news would have reached Alexandria, then Rome, carried by frantic messengers. The emperor's personal honor, the empire's very prestige, demanded retribution. So Publius Petronius, a more seasoned and ruthless military commander than Gallus, is appointed as the new prefect of Egypt and tasked with crushing the Kushite rebellion. Around 24 or perhaps as late as 22 BCE, Petronius, at the head of 2 legions, perhaps 10 to 12,000 heavily armed Roman soldiers, marches south with a vengeance. Petronius is brutally efficient. He drives the Kushite forces out of the Roman towns they had occupied. He pushes deep into Kushite territory, his legions a relentless machine of war. He even reaches and sacks the city of Napata. This was a devastating blow. Napata, though no longer the political capital, remained the primary religious center of Kush, home to the sacred mountain of Jebel Barkal, revered as the dwelling place of the state god Amun, and the site of royal coronations and burials for centuries. Imagine the anguish in Kush as news arrives that Napata has fallen, its temples looted, its people enslaved. For Petronius, according to Roman accounts, enslaved its inhabitants. The Romans might have believed that by striking at the religious heart of Kush, they could break its spirit. But Candace Amanirenas and her people were forged from sterner stuff. The loss of Napata was grievous, but Meroea, the political and industrial heart of the kingdom, lay much further south, a difficult and dangerous march for a Roman army that would be operating at the very limit of its supply lines, in an increasingly arid and hostile environment. The Kushites, even if defeated in set-piece battles against the superior heavy infantry of the legions, would have melted into the desert, employing guerrilla tactics, harassing Roman columns, poisoning wells, their archers striking from hidden positions. Strabo mentions Kushite forces making a stand at Selchis, Dhaka, and Primus, Qasr Ibrim, indicating continued fierce resistance. The queen herself, according to Strabo, sent her envoys to Petronius even before he attacked Napata, attempting to negotiate, stating she didn't know who Caesar was or why they were fighting. This could have been a clever diplomatic ploy, a way to gauge Roman intentions or to buy time, or perhaps even a genuine statement reflecting the vast distance and cultural gulf between Meroea and Rome. Petronius, it seems, was not in a listening mood at that point. However, after the sack of Napata, and despite Petronius's claims of victory, the Romans did not, or perhaps could not, press on to Meroea. The logistical challenges, the prospect of a long, drawn-out war of attrition against a determined enemy in an unforgiving land, must have given even Petronius pause. He established a Roman garrison further north, at Primus, and then withdrew the bulk of his forces back to Egypt. The war from a Roman perspective might have seemed won, but from the Kushite perspective, it was far from over. They had been bloodied, but they were unbowed. And this is where Candace Amanirenas displays her remarkable statesmanship, shifting from warrior queen to shrewd diplomat. Realizing that continued military confrontation with the full might of Rome was likely unsustainable in the long run, but also knowing she had demonstrated Kush's formidable capacity to resist, she opts for negotiation. But not with Petronius. No, she aims higher. Kushite ambassadors, carefully chosen for their wisdom, their eloquence, perhaps their knowledge of Greek, the lingua franca of the Eastern Mediterranean, are dispatched on an extraordinary mission. Their destination, the island of Samos, off the coast of Asia Minor in the Aegean Sea. It's an epic journey, down the Nile or overland through harsh desert corridors to a Red Sea port, then by ship across the sea or perhaps overland through Roman Egypt itself, a tense passage, and then another sea voyage. And why Samos? Because Emperor Augustus himself was holding court there, overseeing the affairs of the Eastern Roman Empire. The Kushite envoys were going straight to the top, to the man whose head their queen was metaphorically and literally trampling underfoot back in Meroe. Imagine the scene. These Kushite dignitaries, in their distinctive robes, their dark skin a striking contrast to the Mediterranean hues of Samos, perhaps bearing symbolic gifts of gold, ivory, or exotic animals, arriving not as defeated supplicants, but as representatives of a sovereign power seeking a just peace. They would have needed immense courage and diplomatic skill to navigate the complex protocols of the imperial Roman court, to present their case before the most powerful man in the known world. This brings us squarely back to that fascinating scholarly debate. What exactly were the terms of the peace treaty of Samos, concluded around 21 or 20 BCE, and what did it signify? Roman historians, eager to preserve the image of Roman invincibility, naturally framed the outcome as an act of imperial magnanimity. Strabo, our main source, claims Augustus granted their requests, implying a pardon. But the tangible results tell a more nuanced story, one that strongly suggests the Kushites negotiated from a position of unexpected strength, a strength forged by Candace Amanirenas' military resolve. Consider the key outcomes. Firstly, the Romans agreed to withdraw their frontier southward, effectively ceding the Dodecashoinos region back to Kushite influence or establishing it as a neutral zone. This was a significant concession as the area held valuable trade posts and access to gold mines. Secondly, and most crucially, Kush was not required to pay any tribute to Rome. This is almost unheard of for a kingdom that had engaged in open warfare with Rome and had Roman legions occupy parts of its territory. Client states, defeated enemies, they all paid tribute. The absence of this obligation is a massive indicator that Rome did not consider Kush a subjugated territory. Thirdly, the Roman garrison at Primus, which Petronius had established, was eventually withdrawn. The border stabilized, and for the next 2 centuries, relations between Kush and Rome were largely peaceful, characterized more by trade than by conflict. Rome never again launched a major invasion of Kush. So was it a Kushite victory? Many modern historians, particularly those working to decolonize the narrative and give due weight to non-Roman perspectives, argue persuasively that it was. Candace Amanirenas and her kingdom had fought the world's sole superpower to a standstill, inflicted humiliating defeats, and then negotiated a peace that preserved their independence and territorial integrity. It was, at the very least, a highly successful defensive war and a diplomatic triumph. Augustus, ever the pragmatist, likely concluded that the cost of attempting a full conquest and long-term occupation of the remote, fiercely defended Nubian kingdom far outweighed any potential benefits. A stable, independent, and perhaps even cautiously friendly Kush on Egypt's southern flank was a far more sensible outcome than a perpetual, resource-draining war. It's like a high-stakes poker game where the smaller player, through bold bluffs and skillful play, forces the player with the giant stack of chips to concede the pot and walk away, muttering about what a generous opponent they were. The immediate aftermath in Meroe must have been a period of immense relief and pride. Queen Amanirenas, the Candace who had dared to defy Augustus and had emerged with her kingdom intact and her honor bright, would have been revered. Perhaps new temples were built, or existing ones lavishly redecorated with scenes commemorating these momentous events. The lion god Apodamek trampling Roman foes, the queen making offerings in thanks for divine aid. The rhythm of life along the Nile in Meroe, the clang of the iron forges, the chatter in the marketplaces, the chanting of priests in the temples, would have resumed, but with a new undercurrent of confidence. They had faced the dragon and had not been consumed. The reign of Candace Amanirenas and the other powerful Candaces who would follow her had firmly established Kush as a kingdom that could not be easily dismissed, a testament to their leadership, their people's resilience, and their enduring place in the grand, unfolding story of ancient Africa. The Nile's gentle current, flowing past the pyramids and palaces of Meroe, seemed to whisper a timeless truth, that courage and wisdom can indeed stand against might. The dust of the Meroitic War has settled, a fine layer over the sands of Nubia, a memento of a conflict that redefined power dynamics on the Nile's southern reaches. The Roman legions, after their taste of Kushite resilience, have largely retreated north, and the envoys returning from Samos carry with them not chains of submission, but a treaty that speaks volumes of Kushite strength, negotiated under the shrewd gaze of Candace Amanirenas. From this hard-won peace, an era of remarkable prosperity and distinct cultural expression blossoms for your kingdom, Meroe. You are there, in the heart of this thriving capital, and the city itself seems to exhale a collective sigh of relief, then inhale deeply the sweet air of autonomy and opportunity. This isn't just a lull before another storm, it's a true golden age for Kush, a period stretching for centuries where its unique identity shines brighter than ever. Imagine yourself walking through Meroe during this flourishing epoch, from the late 1st century BCE through the first few centuries of our Common Era. The city is a vibrant tapestry of sounds, sights, and smells. The markets are alive with the chatter of merchants haggling in Meroitic, Egyptian, Greek, and perhaps even tongues from deeper within Africa. The air carries the scent of spices, roasting grains, dates, and the metallic tang from the ever-busy iron forges. This is a cosmopolitan center, a vital crossroads, and everywhere you see the evidence of a culture confidently expressing itself. The art of this period is captivating. While the long shadow of Egyptian artistic convention is still visible, Meroitic artists increasingly imbue their work with a distinctive local spirit. Temple reliefs like those adorning the Lion Temple at Naga, built by King Natakamani and his powerful co-ruling Candace, Amanitore, depict the royal couple with a robust vitality. Their features often more rounded, their regalia uniquely Meroitic, sometimes incorporating vibrant African wildlife motifs, elephants, giraffes, and of course the ubiquitous lion, symbol of Apidamak. You might see palaces with grand colonnaded halls, their walls perhaps once adorned with vivid frescoes, though few of these have survived the ravages of time. The way gods are depicted, too, can be startlingly original. Amun might still be shown with his ram's horns, but Apidamak, the lion god, often appears with striking, sometimes even serpentine features, a powerful, indigenous deity embodying the fierce spirit of Kush. And then there are the pyramids, the most enduring visual signature of Meroitic royalty. Journey to the royal necropolises just outside the city, at sites like Begarawiya. Here, you don't find a handful of colossal structures like at Giza, but a dense forest of dozens of smaller, steeply angled pyramids, thrusting towards the brilliant blue Nubian sky. Each pyramid, constructed from reddish-brown sandstone blocks, marks the tomb of a king, a queen, or a high noble. Attached to the eastern face of each is a small funerary chapel. Imagine stepping into one of these chapels, escaping the desert sun. The interior walls would have been covered in painted reliefs, a vibrant kaleidoscope of scenes. The deceased ruler, perhaps a mighty Candace, shown larger than life, adorned in intricate gold jewelry and fine linen robes, making offerings to Osiris, Isis, and Anubis, but also to local deities. You might see the Ba, the human-headed bird representing the soul, fluttering above the deceased, or scenes of daily life and feasting, ensuring prosperity in the afterlife. These chapels, sometimes incorporating surprising Hellenistic or Roman architectural details like arches or decorative columns, learned through trade and diplomacy, are a beautiful fusion, a distinctly Meroitic vision of eternity. This long, prolific period of pyramid construction and the sophisticated artistry within their chapels is a well-documented historical fact, a clear testament to the kingdom's enduring stability, wealth, and unique cultural identity. The lifeblood of this Meroitic golden age flows from two main arteries: its mastery of iron and its central role in transcontinental trade. The reputation of Meroe as a major iron-producing center, perhaps the most significant in sub-Saharan Africa at the time, only grows. The rhythmic clang of hammers on anvils, the intense heat and roar from the smelting furnaces, the sight of skilled Kushite smiths expertly shaping glowing iron into tools, weapons, and trade goods, these are the daily pulse of the city's industrial heart. This iron means more than just strong swords and spearheads that could give Roman legionaries pause. It means more efficient farming implements, hoes and plowshares, leading to better harvests and greater food security for the kingdom. It also means a valuable commodity for export, and Meroe is perfectly positioned to thrive through trade. Imagine the bustling caravan routes, Kushite merchants, figures of respect and experience, lead heavily laden donkey trains. They carry ingots of Meroitic iron, exquisite painted pottery, some of it so fine and thin it's called eggshell ware. Beautiful faience amulets and beads, perhaps bolts of locally woven cotton textiles, and of course, gold. They journey north along the Nile corridor to trade with Roman Egypt, or eastwards across the desert to bustling Red Sea ports like Berenice, connecting Kush to the maritime trade routes that stretch to Arabia, India, and beyond. In return, caravans bring back the luxuries of the Roman world: fragrant wines from Italy or Greece, stored in tall amphorae, fine olive oil, sophisticated glassware, a status symbol, an array of fine Samian ware pottery, and perhaps even marble for royal building projects. But Meroe is not just a consumer. It's a crucial conduit, a funnel for the exotic treasures of Inner Africa. Gleaming elephant tusks for ivory, aromatic incense and myrrh, shimmering ostrich feathers, the prized skins of leopards and other wild animals, and perhaps even live animals like monkeys or giraffes, destined for the private menageries of wealthy Romans or the brutal spectacle of the arenas. Kush, under its candaces, is a vibrant, dynamic link in a chain of civilizations, a wealthy intermediary between the Mediterranean world and the heart of Africa. The tradition of powerful candaces, queens ruling with significant authority, continues well after the climactic confrontation with Rome. While the individual reigns of queens like Amenishakato, Amenitore often ruling jointly and on equal footing with King Natakamani, and later queens like Nawidamak or Amenikatashi are sometimes pieced together from inscriptions and archaeological finds. Their collective presence underscores a remarkable continuity of female power and influence. Consider the treasure hoard found within the pyramid of Candace Amenishakato at Meroe, a breathtaking collection of gold jewelry that speaks volumes of her status and the kingdom's immense wealth. Imagine her adorned in these pieces: massive shield rings worn on the fingers, some intricately engraved with images of the god Amun, heavy gold armlets featuring rams' heads or divine figures, elaborate necklaces of gold beads and precious stones like carnelian, lapis lazuli, and amazonite. This wasn't just personal adornment. It was a display of royal power, divine favor, and the command of vast resources. The sheer skill of the Kushite goldsmiths is evident in every piece. These queens were not mere figureheads. They were active rulers, patrons of grand building projects, like the numerous temples built or restored by Amonitore and Natakamani across the kingdom. And they were the living symbols of Kushite sovereignty. Their frequent and prominent depiction in art, often with an emphasis on robust, powerful figures, suggests a cultural ideal where female strength and authority were not only accepted, but celebrated. The religious landscape of Meroe remains a fascinating blend, a testament to Kush's ability to absorb and adapt. The great Pan-African, originally Egyptian gods like Amun, the king of the gods, often depicted with his distinctive ram's horns, and Isis, the great mother goddess whose cult was so popular it spread throughout the entire Roman Empire, continue to be deeply revered. Their grand temples, like the Amun temple at Meroe or the one at Naga, are maintained, expanded, and embellished by royal patrons. Yet, alongside these established deities, indigenous Nubian gods assert their unique character with increasing prominence. Aptimak, the lion-headed god, becomes almost a national deity, a powerful symbol of Meroitic strength and identity. His temples, such as the magnificent lion temple at Musawarat es Sufra, show him in dynamic, sometimes fearsome forms, as a lion-headed serpent emerging from a lotus flower, or as a warrior brandishing weapons, always a protector of the Kushite realm and its rulers. Other local deities like Sabayamakr, a creator god, also receive worship. This religious syncretism, this comfortable coexistence and blending of different divine traditions, is a hallmark of Meroitic culture. It speaks of a society that is both deeply rooted in its own ancestral beliefs and open to the wider spiritual currents of the ancient world, forging a unique religious identity from these diverse strands. And then there is the enduring enigma of the Meroitic script and language. As we've touched upon, the Kushites developed their own unique writing system, ultimately derived from Egyptian hieroglyphs but ingeniously adapted to represent the sounds of their own distinct language. It appears in two forms: a formal, somewhat monumental hieroglyphic script used for temple inscriptions and royal stelae, and a much more common, flowing cursive script used for a vast array of everyday purposes: funerary texts on offering tables, graffiti scrawled by temple visitors, perhaps administrative records or personal letters, though few of these more perishable documents have survived. While linguists have successfully deciphered the script itself, it's largely alphabetic, with about 23 distinct signs, plus a few syllabic ones and a word divider. The Meroitic language it records remains largely undeciphered. We can often transliterate the texts, sounding out the words, but understanding their meaning, their grammar, their vocabulary is an ongoing, incredibly challenging process. Only a few dozen Meroitic words have been definitively identified, often names of people, gods, or places, or basic terms found in repetitive funerary formulae. This is a quirky and tantalizing detail for anyone interested in ancient languages. Imagine volumes of history, religious texts, poetry, perhaps even shopping lists or personal diaries, all beautifully written, all tantalizingly close, yet their full stories remain locked away, whispering just beyond our full comprehension. Linguists continue their dedicated efforts, comparing Meroitic to other African language families like Nilo-Saharan or Afro-Asiatic, hoping for a breakthrough, a Rosetta Stone moment for Meroitic. Oh, Meroe, you might sigh, looking at an inscription. What further tales of your queens and your people are you waiting to tell us? But even golden ages, like the slow descent of the desert sun, eventually give way to twilight. As the centuries advance, from the 2nd and 3rd centuries CE onwards, the vibrant energy of Meroe begins to wane, its power and influence slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, starting a long, gradual decline. This brings us to another area of rich scholarly debate. What constellation of factors led to the eventual fading of this once mighty kingdom by the 4th century CE? There's rarely a single arrow that fells an empire, more often a quiverful. External pressures undoubtedly mounted. To the east, the kingdom of Aksum, centered in the highlands of modern Ethiopia and Eritrea, was on a meteoric rise. Aksum, with its access to the lucrative Red Sea trade routes and its own powerful military, became a direct competitor and eventually a dominant force in the region. The famous Ezana stone, an Aksumite royal inscription, even boasts of King Ezana's military campaigns into Kushite territory in the early 4th century CE, claiming to have sacked towns and subjugated populations. While the extent of Aksumite conquest is debated, their ascendancy certainly disrupted Meroe's trade and siphoned off its wealth and influence. Simultaneously, the Roman Empire, Meroe's longtime northern trading partner, was itself beginning to experience significant internal crises and a slow decline from the 3rd century onwards. A weakened Rome meant diminished trade opportunities and perhaps less stability on Kush's northern frontier. Adding to these pressures were increasing raids by nomadic peoples from the surrounding deserts, groups known to the Romans as the Blemmies and the Noba. These mobile, resilient desert dwellers may have put constant strain on Meroe's settled agricultural lands and trade caravans, further destabilizing the kingdom. Internal factors likely played a crucial role as well, though the Meroitic texts, still largely unreadable, keep these details frustratingly hidden. Were there prolonged periods of drought or unfavorable Nile floods that crippled agriculture, the bedrock of the economy? Environmental degradation is a strong contender. Centuries of intensive iron smelting around Meroe would have consumed vast forests for charcoal. This deforestation could have led to soil erosion, a more arid local climate, and a depletion of essential natural resources, making the region progressively less able to support a large, centralized urban population. One can imagine the fertile lands around Meroe slowly, tragically, yielding to the encroaching desert, the lifeblood of the kingdom gradually thinning like a weakening pulse. Perhaps there were also internal political struggles, succession disputes between rival royal factions, or a weakening of central authority that made the kingdom more vulnerable to external shocks. These are the kinds of internal maladies that often contribute to the decline of ancient empires, harder to see from the outside but corrosive from within. The end, when it came, was not a single cataclysmic event, a dramatic sack of Meroe that snuffed out its flame in an instant. It was more of a protracted fading, a gradual transformation over many decades, perhaps even a century or more. By the mid 4th century CE, Meroe, as the vibrant political and cultural heart of a unified Kushite kingdom, seems to have largely ceased to exist. Power in Nubia didn't vanish, but it fragmented and shifted, with new centers of gravity emerging in the successor states of Nobatia, Makuria, and Alodia. These kingdoms, further north and south along the Nile, would later convert to Christianity in the 6th century CE, ushering in a new and fascinating medieval chapter in Nubian history. A chapter that carried within it subtle echoes and legacies of the Meroitic age that preceded it. Yet the legacy of the Candaces in the great kingdom of Kush is far from extinguished. They stand as a monumental chapter in African history, a powerful testament to indigenous innovation, sophisticated statecraft, profound resilience, and, most significantly for our journey tonight, the long and impactful tradition of strong female leadership in the ancient world. These warrior queens who presided over a thriving, literate kingdom for centuries, who skillfully managed its vast resources, who patronized a unique and vibrant culture, and who dared to stand firm against the might of the Roman Empire, compellingly dismantle simplistic, often Eurocentric, narratives of the past. They remind us that history's grand stage was populated by a diverse cast of powerful actors from all corners of an interconnected ancient world. Their stories, though painstakingly pieced together from weathered stones, scattered artifacts, and the accounts of sometimes biased outsiders, are a vital part of our shared human heritage, an inspiration for modern storytellers, artists, and anyone who seeks a fuller, more nuanced understanding of our past. As you imagine the vast, star-dusted sky arching over the silent, steep-sided pyramids of Meroe, the desert winds whispering ancient secrets through their ruined offering chapels, you can almost hear the faint, proud echoes of their names, Amanirenas, Amanishiketo, Amanitore, a timeless tribute to their indomitable spirit. They were a brilliant beacon of African power, ingenuity, and pride, a flame that, though it eventually yielded to the winds of time, cast a long, significant, and inspiring shadow. Now, as our journey through the sands of time and the chronicles of these formidable queens draws to its gentle, inevitable close, allow the profound sense of their strength, their deep-rooted resilience, and the quiet, enduring dignity of their ancient Saharan land to settle over you like a soft, comforting blanket. Let the vastness of the silent desert and the timeless, unhurried flow of the sacred Nile carry you effortlessly towards a place of deep, untroubled peace. The fierce energy of the warrior queens now softens, transforming into a protective warmth that envelops you. Feel the ancient strength of the Nubian land, the steadfastness of its pyramids under a canopy of brilliant stars, instilling in you a sense of profound security and encompassing calm. Imagine the golden sands of the desert at dusk, still radiating a gentle warmth from the departed sun, now cooling slowly, soothingly, and let that sensation of profound release spread languidly through your entire body. Your limbs feel wonderfully heavy, perfectly comfortable, and deeply, completely relaxed, as if resting upon the softest, most supportive earth imaginable. The natural rhythm of your breathing slows, becoming as gentle, as even, and as regular as the age-old, life-giving flow of the mighty Nile River on a tranquil, moonlit night. With each slow, easy exhalation, you consciously release any lingering thoughts, any flickering embers of tension, any remaining concerns from your day, letting them drift away effortlessly, like small reed boats carried silently out to a vast, peaceful, starlit sea. Picture the serene, infinitely deep sky above the silent, slumbering ruins of Meroe, a sky that has watched over the sacred land for uncounted millennia. Feel an undeniable connection to that timeless peace, that deep, unwavering quiet that holds all stories, all histories, all lives. The narratives of queens and empires, of battles and triumphs, now fade gently into the soft background hum of the universe, leaving only a gentle sense of awe, of wonder, and a deeply felt invitation to rest, to restore, to sink into the deep, nourishing, and welcoming embrace of sleep. You are held, you are secure, you are at peace. Good night.